It was a sight that made the blood run cold in the veins of even the most hardened veterans. Captain T. Moffatt Burriss stood on the southern bank of the Waal River, staring down at the vessels that were supposed to carry his men into the jaws of the German war machine. They were not steel. They were not armored. They were collapsible British engineering boats, made of nothing more than wood and canvas. As Burriss touched the fabric, he realized with a sickening knot in his stomach that a pocket knife could slash right through the hull. And they were expected to paddle these fragile shells 400 yards across open water directly into the crosshairs of the 10th SS Panzer Division. The mission was technically impossible. It was a suicide pact signed by commanders miles away from the front lines. The massive bridge at Nijmegen had to be taken to keep Operation Market Garden alive, and a frontal assault had failed. The only option left was to flank the enemy by crossing the river. But as the clock ticked towards 3 p.m. on September 20th, 1944, the element of surprise had vanished. The fog had lifted. The sun was high and bright. The Germans were watching, their fingers resting on the triggers of MG-42s and 20mm flak cannons, waiting for the Americans to enter the kill zone. When the trucks finally arrived, late and kicking up clouds of dust that alerted every German spotter for miles, the absurdity of the situation deepened. As the men of the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment unfolded the canvas boats, a desperate shout echoed down the line. "Where are the paddles?" There were not enough. The logistics had failed them completely. These elite paratroopers, trained to kill and survive behind enemy lines, were suddenly reduced to scavenging like castaways. They grabbed driftwood. They grabbed shovels. Most simply gripped their M1 Garand rifles by the barrel, preparing to use the wooden stocks as makeshift oars. Captain Burriss looked at his men. There were no speeches, no heroic music, just the heavy, suffocating silence of men who know they are about to die. They climbed into the 26 boats, overloading the flimsy canvas hulls until the water lapped dangerously close to the edge. At 14:55, the artillery barrage lifted. A smoke screen was launched, but a cruel wind immediately swept it away, leaving the river naked. Every soldier in those boats felt the sudden, terrifying exposure. They were sitting ducks in a shooting gallery. The moment they pushed off, hell opened up. The German fire was so intense that the surface of the river seemed to boil. It wasn't just machine gun fire. It was a wall of steel. Flak cannons, designed to shred aluminum airplanes at 20,000 feet, were leveled horizontally at the water. The sound was deafening, a continuous, tearing roar that drowned out the shouts of the officers. In Burriss's boat, the men paddled with a frantic, animalistic desperation, swinging their rifle butts into the water, heads down, praying that the thin canvas would hold. It was a massacre. Bullets tore through the canvas sides as if they were paper. Men were hit and slumped forward, their weight dragging the gunwales underwater. Burriss watched as the boat next to him simply vanished, blown apart by a mortar shell, leaving nothing but oil and blood swirling in the current. Those who fell into the water didn't swim. Weighed down by ammunition and grenades, they sank like stones. Chaplain Delbert Egan, paddling beside Burriss, recited prayers at the top of his lungs, his voice cracking over the roar of explosions. "Hail Mary, full of grace!" he screamed as a bullet took off the top of the helmet of the man in front of him. Of the 26 boats, only 13 touched the far bank. But the men who climbed out of that river were no longer just soldiers. They were incarnations of fury. Soaked, freezing, and traumatized, they didn't stop to take cover. The gritty reality of this moment is often lost in history books. They didn't use tactics, they used rage. They sprinted across the open tidal flat, charging straight into the German machine gun nests. Burriss later recalled that they were screaming, not orders, but primal screams of anger at what they had just survived. The Germans, terrifying SS troops who had held the line for days, broke and ran. They had never seen anything like this, an enemy that crossed an uncrossable river and charged through their own kill zone. The 504th cleared the bunkers with grenades and bayonets, fighting hand-to-hand in the mud. In less than an hour, they had done the impossible. They had secured the northern end of the bridge. But the victory climaxed in a moment of bitter betrayal. As Burriss and his exhausted men secured the bridgehead, expecting the British armored column to race across and continue the attack to Arnhem, the tanks stopped. The British commander, worried about anti-tank guns in the gathering darkness, ordered a halt. Burriss was incredulous. He had just lost half his men paddling through a meat grinder to open this door. He famously confronted the tank captain, threatening to shoot him right there in the turret if he didn't move his vehicle. But the order stood. The tanks turned off their engines. The 504th had taken the bridge, but the delay at Nijmegen would prove fatal for the paratroopers trapped at Arnhem miles away. The Waal Crossing remains one of the most gallant and deadly feats of arms in American military history. It was a victory bought not with strategy or superior technology, but with the sheer will of men paddling canvas coffins into the fires of hell. Stories like the Waal Crossing are fading from memory. Mainstream history often forgets the men who paddled canvas boats into machine gun fire. If you believe, like we do, that these sacrifices must be documented and remembered, join our ranks. Subscribe to the channel and share this record with someone who respects the true price of freedom. Until the next patrol, dismissed.